Hello, welcome to this edition of the Cosmic Cafe podcast. And joining me today is someone who has been requested several times for those of you who used to listen to the New Earth Academy podcast. It is my almost astro twin, Maria Jones, Preistess Astrologer, International Astrologer, and Creatrix of the Stellar Mystery School. All round fantastic Aries Scorpio goddess. Maria, welcome to the cafe.
Oh, it's so lovely to be back with you, especially as we go into this darker half of the year, which is my favorite time. So lots to talk about.
Indeed. No, it's been good. So, Bob, our friendly waiter, is just coming over to take your order. So, Maria, what would you like at the cafe today?
You know it's going to be a pot of mugwort tea with a little bit of honey. And if I was going to choose a cake, I'd
Sure.
definitely go for some gluten-free carrot cake because it's so hard to get hold of.
Oh, that sounds like a task for me to make one next time I see you in person. So, I'm going to join you in a large pot of mugwort tea, but I'm going to have a gluten-free apple and cinnamon cake today.
Oh, sounds delicious. Can we have a bit of both?
So, while Bob is going away to do our order, we are meeting on a pretty potent day for us both and for the collective as well, with Mars going into Scorpio. So before we talk about that, maybe just a quick recap of how we've been since our last conversation, which was just as we started the summer of retrograde joy and happiness and manic. And as we both described it as the summer of retrograde hell, like a raccoon on meth, the energy has somewhat shifted and changed, but it was, I'd love to hear your comments. It was a pretty powerful summer.
It really was. I think that Venus retrograde took people much deeper than they were expecting. It was one of the most powerful Venus retrogrades I can remember. And I think that had a lot to do with the presence of Black Moon Lilith, and Venus's station in conjunction with her. So I know there was a lot of dealing with the shadows of the Venusian energies, that real deep work around relationships, a lot of people letting go of relationships, a lot of people, really looking at their own deep wounding in relationships. And, also financially, I think it had a big impact as well on many people due to the squares with Uranus. So a summer of real breakdowns and breakthroughs, which I think we're still really recovering from as Venus goes into Virgo. She went into Virgo a few days ago, and so did Lilith. So they're both now in the sign of the Earth Priestess. So a very, very different energy. And Venus is the ruler of both of these upcoming eclipses. So we're talking just before the Libra eclipse on the 14th of October. And she will also be the ruler of the Taurus eclipse, which I know we're going to go a little bit deeper into, which is on the 28th, just as we head towards Samhain. So it's that real invitation now to integrate, to purify, to realign, and restructure our lives as this new person that we have become, because I think everybody has transformed on such a deep level over the summer. I don't think we're the people that we were before Venus went retrograde.
And I totally agree. I mean, I was very lucky to kind of hold a very small coaching container and to watch change and the aha moments and the bravery of some people to go really into the kind of bottom of the barrel to the deep sludge was just, well, it was awe-inspiring, but at the same time, you and I were definitely scraping the barrel as well and kind of going through it. And it's that reverberation I'm seeing all over, people splitting up, or, relationships being totally redefined or actually renewed and kind of strengthened as well. It's one of the themes that I've seen quite a lot. But people making huge life changes. And these carefree women that we were at the start of kind of when we met in June are kind of slowly emerging, kind of gently rocking and integrating as we go into the darker part of the year, which is probably going to be just as exciting, if not more so.
Yeah, big energy coming in throughout October in particular, but in a different way, in a very different way. So we're kind of going from that big focus on the Leo energy, which is about joy and, reclaiming pleasure and self-sovereignty. So we've had to strip away everything that doesn't align with our divine essence. Leo's all about recognizing your own divinity. And now we're coming into this kind of eclipse and very deep Scorpio energy with Mars heading in there for the first time for 2 years as we go into eclipse season. And Scorpio is a different kind of alchemy. Scorpio is the power in the darkness. So Scorpio is the power that comes from facing your shadows and your demons. Scorpio is the power that comes from letting go. Scorpio is the power that comes from facing yourself in the black mirror. It's a different kind of energy to the power that we meet in Leo season.
Mm.
So there is an element of becoming the alchemist of your own life.
Wow. Sounds like it. Yeah, it's going to be a very deep season. The dark for me, like you, is the place where we probably feel most comfortable, even though we're both spring babies. It's the second you kind of get through that autumn equinox, you're kind of really starting to move. And I noticed the energy today. We were talking just before we started recording, is Mars has gone into Scorpio today, and we've both rocked up. In that kind of. I've dressed in black. I've changed
Mm-hmm.
my star picture. We've got incredibly similar
Mm-hmm.
star pictures, and we're both in that kind of really embracing that part of the dark goddess, which I think many are quite scared of. And I see people who've got a lot of Scorpio in their chart who don't want to face that black obsidian mirror because they're afraid of what they're going to see next.
Absolutely. And I think I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and we were talking about healing. And I was saying that the only way that you can really heal is to sit with what you're feeling, is to sit with the shadow, the pain, the fear, the rejection, whatever it is that you don't want to feel. And that's why people are uncomfortable with Scorpio, because you can't avoid that. You can't avoid facing what has been hidden. Scorpio reveals everything, even the things that we don't want to see, even the desires that we don't want to admit that we have. Scorpio reveals it all. And the irony is that when we do step forward to meet the dark goddess, when we welcome her in, this is when the deep transformation can actually happen. This is when the forward movement can actually happen, because a lot of the modalities and avoidance that we often see in the spiritual community actually keeps us stuck because we're not moving that energy. Yeah, we're not allowing ourselves to feel and embrace it. We're fragmenting ourselves by ignoring the dark.
And I think that for me is such an important statement, and really reiterating what I've been feeling recently is that, however we regard ourselves, star seeds, light workers, priestesses, whatever label we've given ourselves, it's that collective fear of facing the shadow of having that stuck energy of being in that love and light bubble, which doesn't really serve anyone because we're not truly shifting through the layers that need to be done personally and collectively to move forward. And I think, given what's going on kind of globally at the moment, we really need to sit in that space of deep uncomfort, but also allow that Scorpio energy to really pull out all the things that need to come out at the moment, shall we say, all the the lies, the distrust, the collective messaging that has been told from a place of untruth. For me, this is the season where it's really going to come up and probably hit us a lot harder than it would have done previously, but maybe we're readier for it. Some people will be readier for it, but I think that's a really important thing for me, is that recognition that, on the spiritual path, it's not just love, light and unicorn sparkles. Sometimes it is, and I'm going to quote you because I remember reading this earlier, our greatest treasure is from the darkest place. And we
Yeah,
really need to start embracing that to move and shift our consciousness rapidly.
absolutely. The only way out is going through, and Scorpio season and the darker half of the year really reminds us of that. We have to go into those depths of our psyche. That's where the transformation happens. And it's just that real recognition that all of life is cyclical. And as women
Mm.
in particular, we are cyclical beings. So if you try to bypass a phase of the cycle, you get stuck in a loop. Everything has to die, everything has to change, everything has to transform. And when we recognize that and lean into it instead of resisting it, that's when, we can really enter that other Scorpio phase, which is that of the Phoenix. It's the rebirth. But if we're holding on to old identities, old ways of being, old ways of doing things, we're trying to keep things the same, nothing's going to change. We'll just stay stuck. And that is not the nature of life. Everything is
And it's amazing
constantly
when you,
moving.
yeah, and when you're watching people and you start to really become aware of this energy, you can see who's holding on at the moment, holding on for, feels like grim life. It's that fear, isn't it? It's almost like you're stuck on a waterfall. Do you jump in and let the water move you and take you, or do you just hover there permanently? What is your trust? Because essentially, if you let yourself go, if you let yourself fall into the water, that allows that forward
Mm.
movement. But I see on so much of the work that I do, these people just stuck. And it's like you've got, fight or flight, you're totally frozen. And it's
Yeah,
kind of, I guess from both of us, it's that encouragement of let go. Go and sit in the darkness and go and allow whatever it is to come up.
absolutely. I think that element of flow and trust is so important, particularly when Mars is in Scorpio, which is where she's going to be for the next 6 weeks for this eclipse season. We're obviously going to have the sun, we're going to have Mercury, and eventually Venus later in the year, I think mid-November, moving into Scorpio. So one of the shadows of Scorpio energy, and this is where a lot of Scorpionic people do get a little bit stuck as well, is that desire to control, that desire to almost manipulate reality at times to serve our own desires or obsessions, because that Scorpio, it's that force of will, that force of desire, that almost hunts down its prey, what it's after. So we have to be very aware of this desire to control as well, or even predict outcomes, because Scorpio is such an oracular psychic sign as well. That's another way that we can get caught up. We can read the energy undercurrents, and we can fall into that shadow of suspicion or paranoia as well, a little bit with Scorpio. So these are some things to be very aware of as well, that we will, feel a call with Mars in Scorpio to achieve our desires at any cost. So that's something, if we're feeling extra amped up, to just be a little bit aware of. And, on the global level as well, with what is playing out at the moment, Mars in Scorpio can really amplify that. We've got the Lady of War in the sign of transformation. So just knowing that this can be a very, very deep time on every level.
And I think we'll definitely see that on the collective level as well. And as you kind of feeling into that energy of, you know, getting stuck in the predictions, I'm kind of taken back to those people who are still maybe lost in the rabbit holes of various theories or going down new rabbit holes,
Mm.
and actually reading the energy as it is in the now, not predicting what it could be, because the second that we go into too much prediction, not just the kind of, you know, kind of almost we're telling the story of what will happen, then that is more likely to happen and very likely to invite in that energy, rather than kind of taking a slightly logical and neutral mind just to say, here are the optional outcomes, but where am I going to put my energy? And I'm seeing a lot of people doing a lot of predictive kind of, this is what's going to happen, and I don't think that's a particularly helpful energy at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the future is always created from the present. So where we put our energy is so important. And the ability to predict or oracle is, you know, very much based around your ability to read the current energy where it is now. So you have to see where a person or a situation is at in the moment to see how the energy is going to weave into the future.
Mm.
So we always have that point of power, and we can always choose our response to things. That's another one of the kind of scorpionic shadows, you know, is that going down the rabbit hole, wanting to know everything about everything, you know. Scorpio uncovers it, you know, seeks beneath the surface, but that can lead us into so much um, darkness in many ways. You know, Scorpio does dwell in the darkness. So it's very important to, you know, let ourselves come up for air at times as well, which is really, you know, it's really nice that we've still got this kind of Venus energy moving through Virgo and Libra as well, which is a little bit more supportive. Um, and can help us to really process and have perspective on what Scorpio season and eclipse season brings up for us personally and collectively.
Mm. So always that reminder of coming up the air, of just really, so yeah, you're right, reading the energy of the moment and not going into what could be, because that of course can change itself. So as we move into this eclipse season, so we've got that full new moon in Libra, which will be in a couple of days
Mm.
time as we're recording, and then we go into that lunar eclipse in Taurus, which for me feels incredibly potent and incredibly powerful, because it's the, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the last eclipse in Taurus for quite some time. It's kind of closing off that season that we had at kind of the Taurus season, Scorpio full moon, which was really powerful, wasn't it? That was back in May, I think. But it's kind of closing that off. So could you just tell us a little bit more? What can we expect, probably firstly from the eclipse season, and then specifically into that kind of Taurus full moon, which feels big already?
It really does. I think this is a very powerful eclipse gateway, which, as you mentioned, brings completion to the Taurus Scorpio cycle of eclipses, which began in Beltane of 2022.
Mm.
That was the first eclipse on that axis. And it initiates us into this new cycle of Libra Aries nodal axis eclipses. So the first eclipse is that Libran eclipse, 21 degrees Libra, 14th of October. And we haven't had an eclipse like this since October of 2005. So it's a very powerful one. It's a new moon south node activation, and it's a ring of fire eclipse. So it's a powerful, powerful eclipse. It's in square to Pluto, who is stationary. So this is really a portal of transformation. that opens the gateway that leads us through this kind of 2-week tunnel of eclipse alchemy. So, as I said, both of these eclipses are ruled by Venus. So, again, our attention is on these Venusian themes of relationship, resources, and what brings us pleasure. And Libra in particular is very much about the balance of self and other. So this Libra Aries axis is really calling us into what are my needs and desires versus what other people expect of me. So Libra loves to keep the peace, right? Libra loves that harmony and balance. So it's like, where are we doing that at the expense of our own Aries needs, of our own authentic self? So as we recognize what is out of balance, it forces us to create changes in these areas. So relationships can fall away, new relationships can come in, because eclipses are like wild card energy, right? They're fated events. So you're just as likely to have to let go of something as you are to receive something that you didn't expect. So it creates change. Either way, they want to shake you out of your comfort zone. But with Libra, this Venus energy, we're definitely looking at karmic interactions, karmic contracts, and also globally themes of peace and justice. Libra is marked. She's Lady Justice. She is she who holds the balance of the seasons and the stars. So this is about karmic justice in many ways as well. So I would invite you to look at what is out of alignment in your life, where you need to weigh the scales of karma. So Libra is the claws of the scorpion. She is the gateway we walk through into the underworld. So if you were coming to the end of your life and your heart was being weighed on those scales of balance, what would you need to readjust? What karma, old attachments would you need to clear before you could enter the underworld realm from a clear space? So that's the deep energy of Libra, right? And that's leading us through into Scorpio season and into the Taurus eclipse, which I believe is 5 degrees Taurus, 28th of October. So again, as we mentioned, this is clearing up this previous kind of 18-month cycle. So it's really good to look at what has changed and transformed in your life since Beltane of 2022. And if you know your chart, look to the Scorpio and Taurus ruled houses where those activations were happening. You know, what has alchemized, what has transformed. And the North Node was in Taurus. So it's very much asking us, how much have you opened to receive? How have you changed your perspective on your own worthiness and what you deserve, and what kind of embodied life that you want to live? Taurus is all about embodiment. She's the earthly Venus. So she's all about the pleasures that we take from life. And as she's sitting opposite to the Sun and Mars, Mercury in Scorpio, this eclipse can place a big focus on intimacy, sexuality, sensuality as well. So where are we holding on to blockages? Where are we holding on to old attachments or desires? So this can be a very transformative eclipse on the physical level as well. Again, ruled by Venus in Virgo, so there's that element of purification. But at the time of the eclipse, we've also got Mars and Mercury conjoined in Scorpio. So this is a big revelation energy. You know, nothing hides from Mars or Mercury in Scorpio. So this is a time where a lot of things will come to the surface, and they'll be, you know, in a approaching opposition with Uranus as well. So this is a very revelatory period. And the way to work with eclipses is similar to the way that we work with Scorpio energy. We lean in, we transform, we go, we don't try and hold on. We don't try and make things as we wish them to be, but we surrender to what is. And we allow ourselves to experience the full spectrum of emotion. We allow ourselves to grieve if we have to let go of something that we love. We allow ourselves to experience joy when we find something that is pleasurable to us. Yeah, so we are allowing ourselves to be fully human with all of the light and the darkness during this period.
Hold on to your hats is the all I can kind of take from that, because it is, and you will transform as much as you wish to embrace that transformation as well. And I always find that if eclipses, if you're not on the right path, you get that big boot kind of pulls you back into where you want to be. But really picking up on that kind of karmic relationships and everything playing out, that I'm seeing that quite a lot as well, is, you know, the past life people coming back in to do a lot of loose end tying up. It really feels like, and we're kind of processing everything that we need to process in order to package it, because whatever's coming next, and we'll touch on this very briefly, I know we're probably going to do another podcast on it, but as Pluto goes into Aquarius, that's a huge paradigm shift, isn't it? So for me, I'm always taking this last quarter of the year as kind of the right people will come in, and it's, you know, it's tying up the loose ends, it's kind of wrapping the presents back up that have been opened and dealt with everything, and then it's been, when we show it's kind of been refiled, as in kind of like lessons learned, tick, karmic relationship dealt with, tick. But of course we have to remember that that is a deeply emotional and emotive energy as well. And for me, I can see some of that karmic kind of relationships playing out on a global scale as well, because there are very interesting energies, shall we say, in conflict and trying to not work together, wanting to work together, that actually needs to be sorted out on some level, because actually we have to move into the new paradigm. So it feels like oh yeah, big. It's the only word I can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this kind of conflict was being predicted with the nodal shift into Libra and Aries. Aries is war, Mars is war. So we've got the ruler of this node now in Scorpio. So this, you know, can very much amplify things, and also reveal truths about what is actually going on. But what is very interesting to me is this land that is being fought over and fought on is the land of Venus. So it is the ancient land of Inanna, of Lilith, of Ishtar. It's Babalon. So there is a deep magic and feminine energy in that land. So we have to ask ourselves, what is really going on here? What kind of power is really being sought after?
You know, I've just got,
Um,
sorry, go carry on.
and I was just saying that's a very Scorpio thing as well. Power. I need the power. I need to be in
Oh,
control. So yeah.
and when you were saying it, it was just that deep, those really, really deep shivers of truth, and very much around
Mm,
a little bit of a segue, but I know we're both into this topic of that kind of Babylon rising, of, you know, that she isn't just a person, that she is the whole of the feminine. So I've, you know, after we've spoken recently, been really diving into kind of the Jack Parsons, the Babylon workings, and you can really see her firing up collectively and individually. So actually, yeah, I'm trying to kind of process that as that kind of, you know, what is the fight actually over? Is it actually over the suppression of the divine feminine on a bigger level? Oh, lots to think about there.
those were my thoughts. And it is very, very interesting to consider the working that Jack Parsons did, the Babalon working, where, you know, his ritualistic intention was to birth her back into the world. And he thought he was creating what is often called in the magical community a moon child, where an actual female would be birthed. But what actually has happened in the aftermath of these rituals, which took place, you know, in the early 1900s, is that he did rebirth Babylon, but she is rebirthing herself through all women. The Babylon current is rising, and Babylon is just a name that we have for Venus, for Inanna. So it is this divine feminine energy, but we have to remember that Venus is not just Libra and Taurus. Venus is Inanna, so she is Ereshkigal too. She is also that Scorpio energy. So in traditional astrology, we are told that Venus is at her fall in Scorpio because that's where she wears the cloak of the witch, of the enchantress, of the seductress, all of this energy that they have been trying to suppress in that land since, you know, the beginning of time. So the more that we embody this feminine current, all of these facets of Babylon, as we carry that work of those great magicians forward, that is how we play our role in this shifting of the paradigm, which is amplified, as you said, as Pluto goes into Aquarius again next year.
It's fascinating, just taking on that topic of Jack Parsons as well, is because when you kind of read some of the biographies that I've been reading of him, they're like, oh, he's a failed magician, nothing really worked to him. But then if you kind of look at it through magical eyes, you see he's left this lasting legacy that he has implanted through his magic with every woman, this ability to embrace the shadow and the dark and to really stand in her power. If you think about when he was doing his work in, which I think was kind of 40s, 50s, wasn't it, before he had the strange explosion where he passed away.
Yeah.
But you then had the 60s, the revolution, you know, whether you agree with it or not, you know, the pill, you know, the freedom of women to have more sexual relations. You know, we started living with men without being married. Oh, scandalous. You know, women rose to the top, you know, they broke the glass ceiling. This for me is all facets of Babylon rising, and then now we've got into a time where it's more acceptable for us to go back into the magic. So you've got people like Kathy Jones who would have started Glastonbury Goddess Temple, which in itself is, for me, that rise of the divine feminine and the mixture of Babylon. So for me, his legacy has been vast. Yet if you look at it from a very analytical view, failed because he didn't produce the Moonchild. Yet not only did he give us this amazing Babylon working, he also created solid jet fuel, which is a huge, massive undertaking, given that we're now able to go to the moon and use this. So I think you're right. It's this ancient land that is, I can almost hear it if I'm looking now. It's that deep earthly scream of the scorpion kind of rising through and coming up. So we have to, for me, nurture and encourage that to come out. It's just incredibly sad the way that it's having to be played out for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and all part of the agenda, isn't it? That we know that we're moving towards, but very interesting that it's that land that the focus is on at this time, particularly as we're moving through this very Venusian year with the retrogrades and the eclipses ruled by her. But very interestingly, Jack Parsons, of course, had Mars in Scorpio. So this is very much the placement of the occultist, of the magician, because you're bending reality to your will. You know, Scorpio is also the sign of the occult.
Yeah.
It's the sign of the deep magic, the deep initiation, the deep mystery school. So you'll find a lot of these old magicians had this placement. I think John Dee or Edward Kelly had it too. Who, of course, you know, very involved in the story of Babylon. and which maybe we won't digress into today. But yeah, I think he was far from a failed magician. The energy that he embodied and the devotion he showed to this goddess has encoded her in history, even more so than Aleister Crowley, who, was his teacher and his forebearer, because he understood, Jack Parsons understood the feminine, whereas Crowley didn't. So his legacy is living on through us and through people like Carolyn Elliott, who runs her existential kink mystery school in honor of Babalon. Babalon is their patron deity over there. And Babalon is representative of some of the deepest mysteries of the cosmos. She rides the beast. She rides every experience in life. She loves everybody and all things. She makes love to life as it is. So it's this real non-dual awareness that we can cultivate through relationship to her that supports us during these times of big cosmic initiation and stellar gateways opening. If you can learn to love every experience, even the painful ones, then you are on your way to developing magical mastery, in my opinion. So I'll let you know when I get there.
I was going to say, so postcard and the directions, darling.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I get there.
It's funny,
But
isn't it?
it is an alchemical practice.
And we are both deeply scorpionic as well, and I think that's probably why it appeals to us as well. Is that kind of deep transformation and magic. I mean, talking to someone yesterday, and the same comment comes back up. What a time to be alive! What a time to come and work our brand of magic, alchemy, whatever we want to call it, because it's so needed. And um, you got me on the existential kink book. I will put a link to it in the show notes as well, because it's definitely worth a read, because the second we get comfortable with the uncomfortable, we massively shift our perception and the way that we are with that we're going to live. So it's definitely for me a recommended read. But it's really important that we all realize that we all encapsulate Babalon and Venus in all her faces every day of our lives. And during our cycle we can be the she hellcat, or we can be the lover, depending on which part we're channeling today. So boys, watch out. Really.
Absolutely. And these phases of the feminine very reflective in this kind of shift from Libra to Scorpio that we go through at this time of year. Libra, the good girl, the very nice, polite, elegant Venus. And then we go into Scorpio, the witch, the enchantress, the seductress. And everybody has both.
Mm. And
Everybody
then which
has
one I
all of
prefer.
these faces. Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of Mars women, aren't we? Aries, Scorpio energy. So it's very easy for us to kind of tap into that. But I think Libra, being our opposite sign, is such an important energy for us, because Libra teaches the skills of compromise, of being able to see other people's perspectives. Whereas us Aries are very, especially if you've got your ruling planet in Scorpio too, we're very much like, this is my desire, this is my will, this is what will happen.
I'd make it so.
And so it is. Where we learn all the black arts.
My mother might be listening to it.
Yeah, so it's very much this delicate balance, so isn't it,
Mm.
of this relational axis of Libra to Aries. It's the quintessential axis of being human, me as an individual versus me in relationship, and how do those two meet and harmonize. So big activations in these areas for everybody. So Libra is relationship. It's what I call candy floss love. It's that romance. It's that kind of first connection. There can be an element of superficiality. And then Scorpio is this kind of deep, I want to know your soul. I want to merge with you. So that's how we go through the wheel, astrologically speaking. So there's a big focus on how we relate, that is taking us in and down through this portal.
Sort of super actually quite excited about it. But I think that's the way you and I work, isn't it? We're quite, we look forward to going into the dark. It always feels really, really comfortable. But just kind of picking up on that movement of Pluto into Aquarius, which I know we're going to come back in the early January, we haven't decided yet, and have a chat about that, how that's going to affect us. But as we see everything playing out on the global stage, as we see the narrative collapsing literally and metaphorically, I think we really are seeing that. For me, it's the last turn of the thumbscrews of Pluto and Capricorn, who really amp up the volume, amp up the control, because let's face it, Capricorn is all, for me, all about control and top down authority. Excuse me. We're seeing that a lot at the moment. So that's kind of how I'm reading the energy, and it seems like it's going to be quite an intense period from now. Pluto has gone stationary direct, but it does feel like the next 3 months is very almost backward, in the sense that Pluto's moving forward, but we're going back to thumbscrews being tightened. Do you get that kind of same sense?
Absolutely. And I think this is, that last kind of squeeze of Pluto and Capricorn, even though we do get a few more months of it at the end of next year as well. She does do, I think, October to November in Capricorn in 2024 too. But where we're at the moment, she's stationary direct. She's been square to Mars over this weekend, square to the Libra eclipse, but most importantly, square to the nodes. So the nodes are fate and destiny points. Pluto is the planetary force of evolution. If we look at Jeffrey Wolf Green's evolutionary astrology, Pluto and the nodes are very much focused on and intertwined. So it's almost like we're at this evolutionary point collectively. What do we choose? How do we choose to evolve? What is driving us? What are, again, Scorpio, Pluto energy, what are our underlying motivations for the decisions that we are making on a personal and collective level? So we've got this this energy coming up, and it's all preparation for Pluto going back into Aquarius, which happens the same day the sun enters Aquarius. They're moving into Aquarius together. I think it's the 21st of January. It might be the 22nd. I'd have to go back and double check. But this is really going to amplify this transit. And, we talked a little bit about Pluto in Aquarius before. And, the ideal choice that we make collectively is to step into the Aquarian age. It's liberation, it's community, it's rebelling against power and control and unjust systems. The shadow side of that is control and manipulation through technology, through the Aquarian frequency, through science, through belief. So it's like a choice that we have to make. And as Pluto's on this threshold squaring the nodes, it's just such an accurate reflection of what is going on globally. Peace and justice or war? Which side of the polarity is going to be chosen? And that will greatly impact where we go with Pluto in Aquarius next year.
Absolutely agreed. And for me, the choice point comes this weekend at that Libra new moon is, are you standing in sovereignty, power, truth and justice, or are you going to follow the herd and do what you're told? that for me is kind of the theme that will take us through into that Pluto into Aquarius. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the deep shadow of Libra is that compliance. It's groupthink. It's what do other people think of me?
And the
And
power of the word
basing
no.
choices on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Maria, it's been super, as always, to speak to you. I will put the links down in the show notes if people can find you for readings, but also Silver Spiral next year, year 1 starts again in March. Is that correct? If you're feeling you called to train as a priestess astrologer?
Yes, absolutely. It is our time with Pluto going into Aquarius. The astrologers are the oracles of the Aquarian age. So Aquarius is very much about living our life in accordance with the cosmos, and learning astrology is your way of navigating that. It's your way of understanding yourself. It's the way of working magic in your own life by harmonizing with natural cycles. So astrology and magic and alchemy cannot be separated. So if you want to become the alchemist of your own life, if you want to do the shadow work, if you want to be held through that, then please come and join us in Glastonbury next year.
And I have to say, it's highly recommended by myself. I can't tell you how much I am enjoying my training. It was oh gosh, I signed up for this moment. And yeah, if anyone's thinking about it, don't think about it, just book it. Really, it would be my advice. Maria, it's been an absolute pleasure. Come back in January for another one.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. And yeah, wishing everybody that's listening the most transformative Scorpio season. I hope we haven't terrified you all.
No. Thank you so much. And from both of our hearts to yours, sending you so much love. And we'll be back with another episode very soon. Take care.